Inference, it comes from to infer, which means to derive something from facts as conclusion from facts or from some premises. So, a successful act of reference depends more on the listener's ability to recognize what we mean than on the listener's dictionary knowledge of a word we use. So, as we have already discussed that what we say that is more than or that is outside the words meaning. Words do have some meaning, but for understanding an act of communication, the listeners need to understand something more than the words that we utter or that have some meaning for them. So, for a successful act of reference, the listener needs to use his or her understanding more than his understanding of the dictionary meaning of the words. For example, where the spinach salad sitting? For example, in a restaurant, one waiter asks another waiter, where is the spinach salad sitting? The other waiter understands the meaning of this word spinach salad. So his answer or his response may be like this: he's sitting by the door. So it means that by spinach salad, they are referring to some particular customer that usually visits their restaurant. So it means that they are trying to get some meaning which is beyond the dictionary meaning of the words spinach salad. Can I look at your Chomsky? So if your friend asks you such a question, can I look at your Chomsky? So you understand that what does Chomsky mean in this response. So your answer be, sure, it's on the shelf over there. So it means the book by the Chomsky, not the Chomsky in person. So this is a usual understanding that takes place in our conversation all the time. So it's clear that names associate with things, for example, salad, may refer to people, and similarly, name associate with people may refer to things. So this is an act of naming or giving meanings, more extra meaning to words that takes place all the time long in our conversation. Whenever we are having some conversation with others, we do use these things that we use names of things for people and names of people for things. This is a very common thing that takes place in our conversation. The key process here is called inference. Inference, the ability to understand from the facts or from the things that we find in a communication act. So the listener infers that what actually the speaker has meant, whether he has meant for a person or a thing, using a thing's name or using a person's name. So an inference is additional information used by the listener to create a connection between what is said and what must be meant. So that is the responsibility of the listener to understand what is being said and what it means. So this aspect or this quality of the listener is known as the process of inferring the information. He listens to a word that is associated with a person, but it is meant for something, or he listens to a word that is used for a thing that is meant for a person, or vice versa. So this process is a very common process in our communication that takes place every time when we interacting with each other. So the listener has to operate with the inference. So whenever we listen, as listener, we have to operate on the listener, and as our addressee has to operate on this inferences all the time. We are doing these inferences in our communication process. So if X is the name of the writer of a book, then X can be used to identify a copy of a book by the writer. Or if X is the name of a thing, then X can be used to identify a person. So this is a very common process that takes place in our communication. Similar types of inferences are necessary to understand someone who says that Picasso is in the museum. Unless we make this inference, we cannot understand what does the speaker mean. Obviously, we know that what he means, but he is referring to the painting by Picasso. We saw Shakespeare in London. Obviously, the play by Shakespeare. Or Jennifer is wearing Calvin Klein, some artifact of Calvin Klein, the very known brand. So these are very common things that we do in our conversation all the day long, because we cannot help communicating without using inferences in our communication.